I was 7 years old that Christmas Eve. I woke up to the sound of someone tapping on my window. I didn't have my glasses on, so my vision was blurry. I swear I saw Santa outside my window, tapping on the glass. I jumped out of bed, put on my glasses, and ran to the window, but when I looked out, I didn't see anyone, just the snow-covered farm that my family's house was built on. Then I heard my mother and father whispering out in the hallway. I heard the sound of my father loading his gun. "I'm not crazy," my father said to my mother. "I saw someone out the window. They're out there on the property. I'm not messing around tonight." "Don't hurt anyone," my mother told him. "Just a warning shot, babe." My father's boots were heavy as he marched down the hall and out the front door. Mom came into my room and found me at the window. "Baby, what are you doing? You should be asleep." "Is Dad going to shoot Santa?" "Shoot Santa?" She tucked me into bed and ran her fingertips over my forehead to help me fall asleep. "What are you talking about?" "Santa. He was outside. He looked into my window. Is Dad going to shoot him?" I'll never forget the look on Mom's face as it changed from a smile to serious worry. She lowered her voice. She looked at the window and trembled a little. "Just go to sleep, baby. It's Christmas tomorrow." Dad came back about 15 minutes later. I heard him and Mom in the hallway. "Anyone?" Mom asked. "I didn't see anyone. They must have fled the property. The snowfall is getting too heavy anyway." I don't know when I fell back to sleep, but I woke up that same night. Everything was quiet. I slipped out of bed and peeked out my window. There was no one outside, but the snow had stopped falling. Thirsty, I snuck out of my room and down to the kitchen to get some water. And that's when I heard someone whisper. It sounded like it was coming from the living room, but it sounded strange, like a muffled echo. I crept into the living room, and the whispering was coming from the fireplace. Slowly, I approached it. Little Andy, if you can hear me, come outside." "Andy." He was saying my name. "It's me, Santa," he whispered. "I can't fit down the chimney. Come outside, Andy. My sled is out here. I can take you to the North Pole. You just have to come outside." I peeked into the fireplace. His whispers came down the chimney. I looked up, but I could only see darkness in the narrow chimney chute. "Santa?" I whispered. "I have your presents out here, Andy. You just have to come outside. Come on. It's me, Santa." Something didn't feel right about it. I backed away from the chimney, and he kept whispering. "Come on. Come outside. I'll take you to my sled, Andy. Come on." I turned and ran to Mom and Dad's bedroom and stood in their doorway. "Mom? Dad?" Dad shot up fast. He was still half asleep. "Who's there?" "Dad?" He got out of bed and came to me. "Andy, what's wrong?" "Santa. He's on the roof," I told him. Dad was confused at first. What do you mean, on the..." And then we heard heavy footsteps come from the roof. It shook the ceiling. It sounded like someone was running on top of the house. "Go to your mom," Dad ordered. "Baby, come here." I went to Mom and got under the sheets with her. Dad ran into the hallway. I heard him get the gun and load it. "Stay here." Dad went outside, but he didn't see anyone. Mom and I went to their bedroom window. Outside, we could see boot prints in the snow. They led away from the house, all the way to the barbed wire fence about 200 feet away. Dad brought the police out less than an hour later. They found a hole in the barbed wire fence where someone had wrestled with it to get out. They found a trail of blood. Whoever escaped cut themselves on the wire and bled all the way to the road beyond our farm. And that trail of blood led to a set of tire tracks. But they lost the tracks at the highway, and there was no telling which direction this intruder had gone. My father set up a security system all around our property. He told me shortly after the truth about Santa and to never believe anyone who wanted me to come with them. I've never forgotten that night. Sometimes I wake up and still hear that man's voice. He whispers for me to go away with him. I had no family back then, and all my friends had plans for Christmas. As pathetic as it sounds, I spent Christmas Eve alone. I didn't want to just spend it in my crummy apartment in the city, though, so I rented an Airbnb out in the woods in upstate New York. I arrived at the quaint little cottage and settled in. That same evening, that's when things started to get strange. I went out on the patio for a cigarette. I smoked, and I faced the woods. It was quiet and cold, and I thought I heard something out among the trees. I thought it was an animal and paid it no more mind. The ashtray was on the patio railing, so when I went to stamp out my cigarette, my hand knocked the ashtray and it fell off and onto the ground. Luckily, it was empty, so I didn't litter a bunch of cigarettes everywhere. By then, it was too dark to find the ashtray, so I stamped my cigarette out on the snow on the patio, then threw it away in the trash can near the door. About 5 minutes later, I was washing some fruit to put into a salad for dinner when I noticed something through the kitchen window. I could see the patio through the window, and I saw it on the railing, the ashtray. A sick feeling came over me because I know I didn't put it back there. Someone must have picked it up and put it there. And that sick thought crept into my mind. I was not alone out there. I turned on all the lights outside and looked through the windows. I didn't see anyone outside. Maybe it was just my mind playing games with me. I shut all the curtains, locked all the doors, then settled into the living room with my salad and a book to read. It was quiet. I read while the lights from the little Christmas tree danced on the walls. That's when someone knocked softly on the front door. My blood ran cold. I got up slowly and faced the door, praying I hadn't really heard it. But they knocked again. I stayed back from the door. "Who is it?" I called out. They didn't answer me, but they knocked again. I immediately ran back to the kitchen and grabbed my phone off the table. I went back to the living room and faced the door, but this time, I saw something else. Someone was peeking through the little space in the curtains of the window near the door. I could see their eye. He was watching me. I screamed and dialed for 911. "I'm calling the police. You better leave." The police answered. I told them there was someone outside the house trying to get in, and the whole time this person stayed near the window, just watching me. He raised his finger to the glass. He started tapping on it, frantically. He went back to the front door and started pounding on it. "Please, hurry!" I begged the 911 operator. And finally, the man left. I went to the window, and I watched as he disappeared into the woods. The police showed up 5 minutes later. They searched outside, but they didn't find anyone. They suggested I stay at a motel tonight instead, but everything was booked up, and it was too long a drive to get back to the city. But they made me feel safer when they told me he wouldn't come back. They would patrol the area for another few hours, making sure he stayed away. It took me about 2 more hours, but I finally went to sleep in that little bedroom in the back. And the next morning, when I woke up, what I saw made my skin crawl. My suitcase was open, and my things were scattered all out in the living room. My phone was on the floor. The front door was unlocked, and it was open a few inches. I grabbed my phone and was ready to call the police, but I stopped when I saw the screen was open to my photo gallery. Someone had taken pictures of me while I was sleeping. In one photo, they were even holding a knife near my face. And outside on the front door, there was a note hung onto the nail that held the Christmas wreath. Whoever was inside this house, they left me a message. "He was trying to warn you. I was inside the whole time, but you were too pretty to kill. Merry Christmas." I was 14 when we moved into the house at the end of Lansbury Street. It was in a little town in Oklahoma, and the other kids at school warned me about that house. He comes on Christmas Eve, my friend Donnie told me. That's when it happened. I asked him what everyone was talking about, what happened in this house me and my mom had just moved into. Old man Mr. Klein, Donnie told me. He used to live in that house, and on Christmas Eve, he died inside that house. What happened to him? How did he die? He just did. That's all they could find out. He was old, in his 70s. When they found him the next morning, he was dead in his chair in the living room. He'd been dead for hours. And the sad thing is that his daughter and her family were supposed to visit him that night. He put Christmas presents out and everything, but they had a bad relationship, and she never showed. Maybe if she would have, he wouldn't have died. So, what's the deal? I asked. Is he haunting my house or something? They say you could see him on Christmas Eve because that's when he died. Bored teenagers would sneak out to the place and see things moving around through the windows. One even said he saw the old man inside, but the old man didn't look alive. He looked dead. They say he's still furious because he died. Everyone was always too scared to go inside though, but that was years ago. They did some renovations to the old house, and obviously people moved in again. You and your mom. Donnie's words about our new house kept me up at night. I wondered if I would hear anything or see anything, but I never did. Not until Christmas Eve. Mom and I ate dinner at the table in the kitchen. She said I seemed nervous, that I kept looking towards the living room. I lied and said I just thought the Christmas tree we put up and the decorations were really pretty. We went to bed, and everything seemed fine. All that talk about some old man haunting this place must have been just that. Talk. But at 3:24 in the morning, something woke me up. I faced my clock and saw the time. What the hell? I whispered. I didn't understand why I was wide awake until I heard it again. Footsteps out at the end of the hall. They were making the floorboards creak. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I went down the hall, careful and quiet. Someone was in the living room, and it sounded like they were pacing back and forth. I came out from the hallway, but there was no one there. Just the Christmas tree in the corner and a few presents underneath. But still, it felt cold, and I felt like I wasn't alone. Mom? I whispered. Mom came out of her room. She yawned and pulled a blanket tight around her. Sammy, what are you doing up walking around all night? What are you talking about? I wasn't walking around all night. Did you turn the heater off? She was shivering. What are you doing out here? I heard someone out here, I told her. It sounded like what? Nothing, it can't be that. I'm just crazy. You need sleep is what you need, she said. She turned and went back to her bedroom at the end of the hallway. I stood still. I told myself I was just hearing things, and I started to walk back to the hallway. That's when one of the presents from under the tree went flying across the room and crashed into the hallway. I froze. It suddenly felt even colder in here. I could hear something behind me. Someone breathing. Sammy? Mom called from her bedroom. What are you doing? I turned around. I didn't see anyone, but the presents were scattered all over the living room floor now. The floorboards creaked like someone was walking on them. I was so scared I stopped breathing. He was in here. In our house. Finally, I turned and ran down the hallway, but I stopped when I saw my mom standing in her bedroom doorway. She was frozen, eyes wide in horror. Mom, what are you looking at? Sammy, come here. He's right behind you. I felt a cold hand on the back of my neck, and that's when I lunged forward and ran down the hallway. I spilled into my mom's room, and we slammed the door behind us and locked it. The door started banging over and over. Sammy, what is that? Mom asked. I was too scared to say it out loud. I didn't want to believe it was true, but the door kept banging for at least 2 minutes. And finally, it stopped. We stayed in Mom's room the rest of the night, and when we came out the next morning, we found our house completely trashed. The presents had been ripped open, the furniture was overturned, the house was a wreck. Mom immediately started looking for somewhere else to live, and after another month, we left that house. I used to ask my mom what she had seen, or who she had seen, standing behind me that night in the hallway. She would never talk about it. But I know it was him, the man that died in that house. I feel sorry for whoever lives there now. I just hope they leave before Christmas. I was up all night waiting on my husband to come home. It was Christmas Eve. Our kids were adults by then, and they had left for the night to spend Christmas Day with their spouses' families. So, my husband and I were alone that evening. He left about 10 that night. He said he needed to go out for a drive to clear his head. He would get like this sometimes. He thought too much about things in life we can't change, like the fact that we're getting older. And he was always obsessed with being younger. He seemed a little depressed as he drove away. But I stood there at the window and watched as he left into the snow. The night went on, and the snow continued to fall, and as the hours dragged on, it got heavier. Around midnight, I tried calling my husband. He didn't answer, and I was starting to get worried. I stayed up on the couch in the living room. The only light came from the Christmas tree. I was watching TV when he finally called. "Randall, where are you? You've been gone for hours. Is everything okay?" I heard the sounds of wind and his voice talking. It sounded like he called me by accident. "Come on," he was saying. "Come outside. My sled is out here. I've got lots of presents, Andy. Come outside." "Randall?" I asked. "What's wrong?" But he didn't hear me. He kept talking. "I can take you to the North Pole. Come on." And suddenly, the call hung up. I was starting to think that might not have even been my husband. It was another few hours later. I had fallen asleep in the living room when he snuck in through the front door. "Randall?" He was limping. He didn't say a word. He went straight to the bathroom and started the shower. Something was wrong. I don't know why, but something told me to check his truck. And in the bed of his truck, I saw a pile of clothes. They were old and red, and altogether they looked like a Santa suit. And there was more: duct tape and a piece of cloth. Back inside, I peeked into the bathroom while Randall was in the shower. I saw a deep, jagged cut on the bottom of his leg, like he'd wrestled with a barbed wire fence or something. I asked him what had happened and why he didn't want any help, but he wouldn't talk to me. The next morning, he finally explained that he had been at his friend's house out in the country. His friend Andy. He said they got drunk and tried to hunt a rabbit that was on his friend's property, and that's how he hurt himself, by getting tangled with the fence out there. But honestly, I'm not sure I believe him.